What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. Today, we have on the host of the Commanding the Huddle podcast, the Draft Network's very own Ryan Fowler. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on, Mason. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about. First, though, before we get into the Senior Bowl and some of the other stuff with Sam Howell potentially being unofficially named the starter heading into OTAs and training camp, first, I want to ask a few questions about yourself. Starting with here, what first got you into sports media and journalism?
Yeah, so I've been a sports junkie my entire life. Growing up, there wasn't a time where I wasn't following all the four major American sports. And beyond that, if there was X Games on or curling or volleyball, it really didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
I played baseball and basketball, football as a young age, and then as I got older and older, baseball. I played Division I baseball, and that was my goal to be, drafted and be in the major leagues. That's right. As a goal as a young guy is to play professional sports. But I always knew that if I didn't make that, reach that goal, I wanted to be in sports in some facet, whether that was scouting or in the front office or in sports media and in journalism. And I got my start with Washington. I was an intern there. I did a little bit of communications, a little hybrid writing, and I was hired on as a full-time staff writer, and then now with TDN. So I've always just been a sports junkie, and I wanted to stay in sports. Like I said in my past, I went through the draft process as a baseball player coming out of high school. So that was a very cool experience, but I just wanted to stay in sports and find some way to continue to find that love in whatever it was, baseball, football, basketball, hockey. I'm a big hockey guy, big Caps fan. So that's where really I got my start.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And also, you mentioned working with Washington Commanders as a staff writer, and then now with TDN. You also worked with NBC for the Tokyo Summer Olympics as well. What was that experience like, and what was the opportunity that you got over there?
Yeah, it was great. Worked with a lot of great people with NBC. Again, basketball has always been a great thing of mine. I mean, I played it growing up at a high level, and I've always loved following it. Big Wizards fan as well. So getting that opportunity with NBC, covering the men's and women's tournaments in Tokyo, was just a great opportunity because of the individuals that I worked with. NBC is just super talented as an organization. It was a great opportunity. I mean, we got Paris coming up in the next few years. Obviously, USA will always be favorites for gold on the men's and women's side. So hopefully that opportunity again presents itself, but just was a good opportunity and looking forward to more of those down the road with NBC potentially.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. The Olympics is something that I actually have connections with as well because my uncle actually works for NBC as well for ping pong
Very
for
cool.
the Olympics. So that's actually pretty cool. And with your podcast, you're nearing the 1 year anniversary now of the Commanding the Huddle podcast. What has that experience been like for you with TDN, and how did the podcast come to fruition?
Yeah, it's been great. Obviously, with TDN, I cover all college football teams in the draft and then all 32 NFL teams. But with my background from being from Northern Virginia and my background with Washington, just being able to have that platform to really continue to build my platform with the team and the burgundy and gold and be able to talk about the team and the rosters and the organization. It's been a great opportunity what I've been able to build in that community. Nothing's better than the burgundy and gold, right? We both love that team, even though sometimes it's a lot of ups and downs. Not a lot of success recently, but we'll get there. But having that platform over this last year, I can't believe it's been almost a year. But it's been a great opportunity and excited to see what comes in the near future.
Yeah, you mentioned that as well. You've been covering a lot of the college football teams and keeping an eye on a lot of players. You went down to Mobile, Alabama, last week. Last week. So, in last week's episode, I did my positions of need, and in my opinion, I had offensive line as my number one, linebacker at 2, tight end at 3, and cornerback at 4. We'll start with the offensive line. This offensive line, in my opinion, for the Commanders needs a complete redo this upcoming offseason. We have some pieces to work with there, with Sam Cosmi being a younger guy, but there's also a lot of older pieces and some guys that we brought in with 1-year contracts like Trey Turner, older pieces like Charles Leno, who just signed an extension just last offseason, didn't really have the strongest of finishes to a season, even though he did have a great start. Who are some guys that you would say stood out to you in Mobile during the Senior Bowl in terms of the offensive line?
Yeah, first things first, I'm going to start with a local guy, and that's Jalen Duncan from the University of Maryland, one of the most athletically gifted tackles in the class at 298 pounds. The guy moves like a tight end. Got some work at left tackle, got some work at right tackle as well. Just seeing him move around in the run game as well as anchoring in pass pro is really impressive. I wanted to see that from him, just specifically looking at his game against Ohio State and better competition this year. He struggled a little bit and going down to Mobile in a neutral environment against some of the top edge rushers, senior eligible in the class, right? That's the best spot to see what you got, right? Put some on, you have some film, put some more on tape for the scouts and execs in place. And I think Jalen Duncan was extremely impressive. I look at Darnell Wright. I've been on the Darnell Wright hype train for a while, right tackle from Tennessee, for those that are unfamiliar. Again, just how he moves, his feet, everything for me and everything that from execs and scouts in the league, everything starts with footwork. It does. And with that defensive tackle spot, with the edge rushers that you're going to face in the NFC East, whether it's on the right side or in the left side, you got to be able to counter those guys. You just have to. And if Sam Howell is playing quarterback and you have a new shiny toy under center, you got to be able to protect that guy. And Darnell Wright did a nice job protecting Hendon Hooker this year for the Volunteers. Watching him in Mobile, he was dominant at times. He took some lumps, I will say, ups and downs, but I wanted to see that from him just because how he's going to bounce back, right? Not everything's perfect. Not everything's going to be perfect at the NFL level. So for two guys, especially for me, were Darnell Wright from Tennessee and Jalen Duncan from Maryland.
And I think one of the ones that really stood out, both physically and around social media as well, was DeJuan Jones, the right tackle out of Ohio State. Yeah. Longest wingspan recorded in Senior Bowl history, 89.5 inches. He's 6'8". He's 375 pounds. He only practiced one day, that first day, because I think after that, he definitely improved his draft stock a good amount. I didn't want to get injured or any kind of like worst case scenarios type things for the rest of the week, I'm pretty sure. What made him stand out in terms of like physically and stuff compared to the other offensive tackles?
Yeah, he's a massive man, right? And the NFL loves big, right? You love when big guys play big and you love when small guys play big, but you don't like when big guys play small. And DeJuan Jones does not play small at all. You look at his wingspan, ability to move at that weight and height, that's hard to do. That's a lot of weight on his legs, be able to shuffle and kick step and kick slide. Just does a lot of things well. And all the attention this year for the Ohio State front five has been on Paris Johnson on the other side at left tackle, who will most likely be a top 15 pick. But DeJuan made himself some money in Mobile. Biggest thing for me was I'm glad that he stayed in Mobile the rest of the week, even though he didn't play in the game and practice the last few days, to do interviews. That's a big part of the process. We talk a lot about with quarterbacks, but it's important for the other positions as well. So seeing DeJuan in person, he's absolutely massive. You watch him put on the helmet and dominate against the edge rushers that were down there. His ceiling is immense. I think his floor is also high. I think that's something that look at a combination of a high floor, high ceiling guy. It's not often that you get that. And for a guy that's 6'8", 375 pounds, he'll probably play around the 360 range. He's just absolutely fantastic. And that's what you want to see a guy of his stature.
Yeah, for sure. And talking about the outside with the offensive tackles, going inside now for the Commanders, we had Andrew Norwell left guard, and then we had a pretty big rotation of guys playing right guard throughout the entire season. And then at center, Chase Roulier, his second straight season-ending injury leg as well. I don't really know how I feel. I don't feel that certain about the center position either heading into this coming off season, because I think there could be a good chance that Roulier, even though he's kind of a little bit younger, if he were to retire, I think there's a good chance that he might, due to the amount of injuries he's picked up over the last 2 years. So I think we could really be going into 2023 with a new left guard, new center, and new right guard. A guy that stood out to me that we could possibly take with the 16th overall pick is O'Cyrus Torrence. I'm a Florida Gators fan. I am a little bit biased here, but O'Cyrus Torrence is a great run blocker, and especially with the 2-1 run pass ratio that Ron Rivera wants to run in 2023, O'Cyrus Torrence could be a guy that I think Washington could love heading into the draft process, because I saw some reports saying Washington showed extreme interest in him throughout the rest of the Senior Bowl. What did you like out of O'Cyrus Torrence, and what were some things he could work on, keeping on going into the draft process and into his first year in the NFL?
Yeah, I think he has excellent movement skills within the interior. I think that's something that you have to have in today's NFL. You mentioned the 2-to-1 run pass ratio. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition. Because if you're a good running offense, you're going to have to pass the ball at some point. You're a good passing offense, you're going to have to run the ball at some point. I think all good offenses in the NFL are balanced unless you have some sort of unicorn at the position, right? So, but looking at O'Cyrus, I think coming over with Billy Napier from Louisiana Lafayette, extremely powerful in his upper half, very strong built frame. And pass pro, when he sticks those cleats in the ground, he's able to anchor. I don't think anybody's going to be able to get by him, whether he's facing a 280-pound, three tech, or he's facing a 310-pound strict nose guard and an odd front. He can do a lot of different things for you. I think he has some small things to tinker. I want to play a little more leverage for my liking. I want to see him a little more flexible in his lower half. But those are things that are small things you work for it in the first 2-3 years of your NFL career. NFL strength and conditioning programs can be big for him. But I like what I saw from Osiris as well.
Yeah, and again, there's still so many other guys as well in the offensive line that we could pick up come day two and into day three as well that could end up being starters for us at some point in this in the rookie season, really. Because I think, especially the offensive tackle class is pretty deep, especially since we do need an offensive tackle, in my opinion. I do think we will draft one. But yeah, moving on to tight end. A lot of questions with this. We have two young guys, John Bates, Cole Turner, and then we have Logan Thomas. What do you think this position will look like going into week 1 of 2023?
Yeah, man, we got questions. There's a
Mhm.
lot of questions, just specifically with the draft capital that we've used the last 2 years on day 3 with Cole and John. Cole is obviously brought upon. He was thought a guy that's going to be inside the 20s in the red area, an immediate threat over the middle of the field. Obviously, the concussion held him out a lot of games, wasn't able to separate, not a good blocker. John Bates, I mean, coming out of 2021, was that typical wide tight end, aligned to line of scrimmage, was able to block his tail off. He was excellent in that fast set. And then Logan, moving into the year, we're like, oh, Carson Wentz was great with Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz in Philly, and then Jack Doyle in Indianapolis. We thought we were going to have a little bit of a good year, right? Could be a top 15 tight end in the league. It didn't happen. And it was more so, I ended the year more excited for a guy like Armani Rogers, because you need athletic guys in that position. You need a guy that can play in line, a guy that can line to the slot and line outside. You need those types of weapons in your offense. And I don't think they're going to spend high in free agency on any guy like a Dalton Schultz or an Evan Ingram or anything like that. For me, because of the capital that they've used, Logan Thomas has still 2 years left on his contract. It would be maybe a guy like Robert Tonyan, maybe a Foster Moreau, those types of guys, if they go that route. I just don't think they're going to spend a lot of money there. And in the draft, there's talent to be had, and especially in moving to day 3. I don't think they're going to spend a top 3-round pick on day 2 on a tight end. I don't. Luke Schoonmaker from Michigan. Think of a guy, Blake Whiteheart from Wake Forest. There's names all the way down the board that you can be able to grab, but the tight end position they have to figure out, because it's a position in today's game, I'm sure, as you know, Mason, that's just, you have to have guys that are flex weapons that change the math on defense, that are able to flex out to the outside, and they can displace an edge defender at 255 pounds. So they have some questions to be answered there with who they have in the building, what they want to do moving forward.
Yeah, and Logan Thomas, he's still got 2 years left on the contract, but I believe there's a potential out this year as well.
Right.
Could be a cap cut heading into free agency as well. I don't know the exact amount of money we save by cutting him, but I do know it's a good amount, and Washington could really be looking that way with a bunch of tight end options, like you mentioned, the ones in free agency. So you mentioned some of them down the draft boards as well. Some of the ones that stood out to me, at least during the Senior Bowl, Purdue's Payne Durham and Oregon State's Luke Musgrave. Who else in terms of the Senior Bowl stood out to you at that tight end position?
Yeah, those were the 2 headliners. I even saw what I like from Will Mallory a little bit in the game portion, just because he was a sure-handed guy over the middle of the field. But other than that, the tight ends really did not impress me too much when I was down there. I was head focused on Luke Musgrave. He was completely an impressive individual, and I really wouldn't be surprised if the guy is tight end 1 in this class. I know Michael Mayers had all the attention, Darnell Washington, Dalton Kincaid's, those guys of the world, but seeing Luke move in person, the guy looks like a darn offensive tackle at 6'5", 250 pounds. Was one of the fastest guys. They had the GPS in their shoulder pads as far as their speeds every day. You look up at the Jumbotron, he's faster than receivers, faster than corners, and he's just getting his legs under him because he only played 2 games this year. So, I mean, Luke Musgrave was just overwhelming and impressive. Payne Durham, though, from Purdue, I really had low expectations heading into the year for Payne, into the week for Payne. But really uses his body well, leverages corners on his back, did a nice job in the game. Good as a blocker as well, in line, can play outside the slot a little bit. Not overly athletic at all. But again, those day 3 windows that Washington, if they're going to want to make it 3 straight years of grabbing day 3 tight ends, I don't know. Again, I don't know. I would like to see Armani Rogers get more snaps and battle for some, but those are a couple of guys that I like to see down in Mobile.
Yeah, Armani Rogers had a pretty solid preseason. I went to training camp last year. He really stood out to me during training camp as well. I would definitely like to see him on that active roster in some way. If we keep 3 tight ends, we end up maybe cutting Logan Thomas. There's not that much wiggle room on that roster in terms of the tight end position, because when you draft 2 guys like John Bates and Cole Turner, you'd hope that they'd still be on the roster in they're going into their second and third
Yeah,
years.
of course.
So there's not a lot of wiggle room in terms of adding new guys or younger guys like Armani Rogers onto that active roster. But yeah, I'd like to see a lot more playing time from him. Moving on to the next position, cornerback. In my opinion, this is the deepest position in the draft. There's so many guys. You're going to be able to get a good starter on like late day 2, maybe even early day 3. Was there any that stood out to you as possible options for Washington? As I know we have Kendall Fuller, who had a okay year, good. He had a good year. It wasn't great, but it wasn't horrible. And then
Mhm.
Benjamin St. Juice had a kind of like a a great year on some points, and then also did not play that great on other points. It depended on really what game you looked at. But who do you think could be a possible option for Washington, whether it be at the 16th overall pick or sometime in day 2 or day 3 that Washington could draft that you saw in Mobile or just in general?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of names at the top, right? Joey
Mhm.
Porter Jr. from Penn State, Cam Smith from South Carolina, Devin Weatherspoon from Illinois, Christian Gonzalez from Oregon, Keely Ringo from Georgia is going to probably
Yeah.
fall a little bit just because he looks like he looks like a safety right now,
Mhm.
220 plus pounds. But for me, the biggest standout in Mobile was Darius Rush, corner from South Carolina, 6'1", nearly 33-inch arms, long ball skills, former wide receiver. Last year there was a former receiver down in Mobile that was kind of new to the position and then went to the Seattle Seahawks, and Tariq Woolen had a hell of a year. Now he's not going to be as good an athlete, a freak athlete that Tariq was, but just watching him live, he fits the script as far as what you want to see from a legit perimeter CB1 down the line. I don't think he's a CB1 right now. I don't think he's a high CB2, but you put him in outside of Benjamin St. Juice. Kendall Fuller is at CB3 right now. They need depth at that room. I don't want to see Rashad Wild Goose, Danny Johnson's a UFA,
Mhm.
Tariq Castro Fields.
Yeah.
Let those guys get other opportunities somewhere else. We need
Mhm.
some depth in the room. Whether they want to take a guy at 16 remains to be seen. There's a lot of players to be had, but moving to day 2 and day 3, there's a lot of guys. Julius Brents, Kansas State, another long corner. Jacorian Bennett from Maryland.
Um,
The names go on and on and on as far as
mhm.
guys that you want to fit right at zone, play some man. Got to do a little bit of both. It was funny when hearing William Jackson say this year,
Yeah.
I want to run more man. Well, there's not a single defense in the NFL that
Yeah.
runs
No.
just man or runs
Mhm.
just zone, right? You have to do a little bit of both. So, but for me, really, the penultimate Mason coming out of Mobile was Darius Rush as a high riser. I don't think he gets out of early day 2. Thought he was absolutely fantastic. And guys like that have those types of ball skills
Mhm.
don't last long on boards.
Yeah, I mean, there's some other guys too, like Caillou Blue Kelly out of Stanford too. I mean, yeah, like you said, the list goes on and on. I think Washington will definitely take a cornerback at some point, or at least one cornerback in this draft. I hope we possibly take 2 because, like you said, I don't want Wild Goose going in as I guess, a nickel corner or sometimes even a starter if there was an injury heading into 2023. If you were to take a guess now, what position will the Commanders take with their first pick in the 2023 NFL draft?
It's gonna be corner or O line for me right
Mhm.
now, but I will go. Oh man, I'll go corner. I'll say
Yeah.
corner for now, just because
Mhm.
you get a legit CB1 at
Yeah.
16. The quarterbacks are gonna go high. The tackles are gonna fly off the board. Some edge guys are gonna go. You might have your pick of the litter at 16. You might be able to trade back a couple spots if someone wants to maybe come up, if someone falls. If you get an extra day 2 pick or something like that, who knows?
Yeah.
If you're able to still grab a Joey Porter Jr., Christian Gonzalez, I absolutely love. There's some small things with Joey's game. I'm going to be at the Penn State Pro Day, and I'll be at
Mhm.
the Combine to see him hopefully twice before we get into this draft process, or really into the meat of it in the next couple months. But there's some small things in his game where sometimes I think he takes a couple plays off on the outside. His ceiling is absolutely immense. He's going to be one of the longest corners to enter the draft in 5-10 years. Has all the potential in the world to be all pro this, all world corner this.
Mhm.
Coming into Washington and the receivers that we're going to have to cover, multiple times a year, right? New York and Philly and Dallas. You got to cover guys. You never
Mhm.
have enough edge rushers. You never have enough guys that can cover people. So at
Exactly.
16, I'll go corner.
Yeah, and in my opinion, at 16, if either Christian Gonzalez, Evan Witherspoon, or Joey Porter Jr. is available at 16, I'm sprinting up to the podium and drafting them because I would take any 3 of those guys before I would take Broderick Jones or another tackle. I mean, it's a debatable with Skoronski, but then Skoronski will probably play guard in the NFL, so it gets a little bit weird there, but all 3 of those corners I would take at the number 16 overall pick. And you mentioned trading down. I think Washington's in a great position at 16 to be able to trade down like we did last year, maybe 5 spots, 6 spots out of the top 20, maybe even out of the top 25. And once more, we don't have a third round pick this year. which there's a lot of guys on day two that could be potential starters going into their rookie seasons. And having an extra day two pick would be huge for Washington. So I wouldn't even mind if none of those three guys are available at 16, and maybe Broderick Jones is there, but not really. I'm not really 100% certain in him taking him at 16 exactly. I'd probably take him a little bit later on in the first round. So trading down, even if you might lose Broderick Jones, and picking up that extra picks later on would be a huge win, in my opinion, for Washington in that scenario. So yeah, that's pretty much it so far for the Senior Bowl. Moving on here to Sam Howell, as Ron Rivera's made definitely some comments over the last few days to NFL Network saying that Sam Howell will likely be the QB1 for Washington heading into OTAs and heading into training camp. In your opinion, is Sam Howell the move, or do you think we need to trade or sign a veteran quarterback in free agency? I saw earlier today, it seems like the Derek Carr trade is pretty much done with the New Orleans Saints, but again, it's still up to him if he wants to go or not. But yeah, what's your opinion on Sam Howell, and do you think Washington needs to trade or needs to sign a free agent quarterback or a starter free agent quarterback this upcoming offseason?
Yeah, I like Sam Howell at North Carolina, and I had a day two grade on the kid coming out, and grabbing him in the 5th round was a lot of value for me.
Yeah.
I expected him to be in a t-shirt and shorts this year behind Carson and Taylor. That's
Mhm.
how it played out. Comes in week 18 and showcases well against Dallas. I don't think he was a world beater by any means.
Mhm.
Didn't do anything crazy in that game. First pass to Terry was a touchdown. It was a cool little moment for him.
Mhm.
But the ceiling with him in this offense, I think the biggest thing is getting an offensive coordinator in the building, whoever that may be, to mesh all their skill sets together, because I think Sam does a nice job with his arm, but he can also create with his legs a little bit, not just
Mhm.
a guy that's trying to pick up 3-4 yards here or there. He can do some RPO stuff. He can do a lot of different things to make every single level of the defense and the backside of the defense honest, right? So expanding playbooks with the skill sets that you have in the building, and I think Sam Howell can do that. I've liked what I've seen from him as far as this past year learning as a professional, right? He knew he wasn't probably going to get snaps. He was one snap away when Taylor was in the game throughout the entire year, but we just know how tough Taylor is. He's not going to come out of the ball game.
Mhm.
But for me, Sam Howell is QB1 moving into 2023. It's what really I've thought this entire year. It's what I've heard out of the building. I'm excited. I really am. I hope you are. I hope
I'm
Washington
excited. Yeah.
out there listening. I'm excited to see Sam
Mhm.
Howell the full off season with these players, and I think the ceiling is going to be lofty for whoever offensive coordinator comes in the building. I'm
Mhm.
excited for Sam Howell this fall.
Yeah, I'm excited. You talked about the offensive coordinator. It really seems like Washington has a solid chance at getting Eric Bieniemy, and I would love that. Again, Bieniemy, he didn't call plays in Kansas City, and he does need a little bit more experience calling plays. I think Washington, even though there's uncertainty at that head coaching position, I think Washington could be a good place for him to call plays and him to gain more experience if he wants a head coaching job in the near future, whether he gets another boost. If he's the offensive coordinator in Washington, and he's been a potential head coaching candidate for what seems like been the last 3 or 4 years.
Long
Been
time.
getting a bunch of interviews,
Yeah.
and so if Ron Rivera does end up being gone either in the middle of next season or at the end of next season, Eric Bieniemy could be in prime position to pick up his first head coaching position in the NFL, which is something that I love. But yeah, is there anything else you would like to say in the Sam Howell case or for Sam Howell?
No, I just really like his game. This is a day and age where you got to be able to expand defenses and make them cover every single blade of grass. And Sam can do that. Watching him at Carolina, how his game progressed year to year, 2020 to 2021. Again, small sample size this year, but watching him
Mhm.
against, Baltimore, Kansas City, and Carolina in the preseason was really fun. But, with Terry and Jahan on the outside, the names go on and on as far as the skill positions. I think the running backs room is a position group to watch as far as what they want to do moving into this fall. It's going to be B-Rob as RB1.
Mhm.
With Sam and those skill players in this offense, young guys, it's a young core. It's an exciting core. You get a guy in the building that understands how to mesh all those skill sets together. It should be a fun season.
Yeah, and one final thing that just came up, I believe it was yesterday. It might have been today. I'm getting my days mixed up. But Chase Young in the 5th-year option, Washington said or the word out of Washington is that Chase Young in that 5th-year option is not guaranteed. What are your thoughts on that entire situation? And do you believe Washington should pick up the 5th-year option for Chase Young this offseason, which will cost 17 point something million dollars for 2024?
Yeah, it's tricky, right? So the decisions you got to make in the organization as far as keeping a guy, letting a guy go. 2020, I mean, he was absolutely fantastic. But we talk about the best ability is availability.
Hmm.
Chase Young, as an individual, obviously being a local guy from DeMatha and then going to Ohio State, number 2 overall pick. The expectations are still extremely lofty. I just want to see him healthy. That's the biggest thing. I want to see him back on the field. We saw John Allen, Deron Payne basically play like both all pros this year. Montez Sweat was near the top of the NFC in pressures. He finally reached his ceiling after multiple years. Getting all 4 of those back 100% healthy. Hopefully, if Duran is back, I would love to see 94 back in the middle as well.
Yeah.
For me, I want Chase Young back. I really do. I think the ceiling is still there because of the individual that he is, committed to his craft, committed to mastering his craft, and committed to be the best edge rusher in the league. That's what I think his goal is, and that's what his ceiling is, as an elite game-wrecking pass rusher that they thought that he would be at Ohio State. 2020, we saw it. Even the back end this fall when he was getting a little healthy towards the back end. I really don't think he was 100% this year at all.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
glad
think
he
so.
was able to go, but man,
Hmm.
I want to see him back at full strength with hopefully all 4 of those guys back in the burgundy and gold along that front 4 next fall.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about this upcoming off season heading into 2023. Where can people find you on social media? And yeah, pretty much where can people find you?
Yeah, on Twitter, you can follow me if you don't already, _ Ryan Fowler. All my written work is housed at TheDraftNetwork.com, including more video, audio content. And then my podcast, as Mason mentions, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your sports, your news, you can find me at Commanding the Huddle.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. That'll be it for this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. See you guys in the next one. Peace.